All right. Might have well, welcome to this week's podcast. I'm not sure when the video actually started there. You might have caught a little bit of the end. I was on the phone right before this podcast started. Our live stream here on Tuesday nights, because doing a little recruiting interview, and this is what happens, this time of year and kind of all the time during recruiting, when recruiting's going on. But I was on the phone there right before we started, and I'm not sure when I clicked, go live. I'm not sure if that showed up. Let me see here. I'm having weird things again with the chat screen. Looks like they are. All right, we're jumping in here. Welcome to this week's podcast. Just got off the phone with a recruit who's planning an official visit to Pitt this weekend. Kind of a new name to add onto the list. You should go check that out at Panther-Lair.com. We already put that up and just wrapped up the visit. So, you should check that out just wrapped up the interview with him. So you should check that out on Panther-Lair.com. We'll have that on Wednesday morning with a conversation with a new name added to Pitt's official visit list for the weekend. So you'll have to go look for that. But we just wrapped up that interview, so that's why just kind of jumping right into it here on the podcast. Welcome everybody into the live stream here on Tuesday night. If you're listening to the podcast later in the week, I appreciate you tuning in as well. And if you want to join in the conversation, you should join us on Tuesday nights, 8:30 p.m. live, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And you can jump in. And already we got some people, some of our regulars, S. Mac and Kevin Plaucha, maybe our biggest fan, the biggest fan of the podcast and the live stream, already jumping into the chat. If you're on the live stream here tonight on Tuesday, June 22nd, you can put your comments and questions in there. We'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on what's going on and what's, your comments, questions, and anything else on your mind as it relates to Pitt football, Pitt basketball, and Pitt recruiting. And things haven't slowed down. I was trying to think this morning, and I didn't get a chance to go back and look, of where things were in terms of the commitments when we had last week's podcast. When we did the live stream last Tuesday night, I'm not sure how far along we were I'm not sure how far along we were with the commitments. I'm not sure how many. I forget how many had actually been announced. They ended up getting 4 commitments last week. Jordan Bailey was the running back. I know he was announced and had been publicly announced. The running back from Tampa had been announced as a commitment. And then there were 2 kids from Western New York, the Buffalo area, Addison Copeland, a 6'3" wide receiver, and Jimmy Scott, a 6'3" defensive end. And they're both 6'3", but there's about a 60-pound difference there. Copeland's about 190, and Jimmy Scott's about 2.5 bills, so a little bit of a different size there, but they're both 6'3", both really good players. And then the 4th commitment was Rylan Gandy, a cornerback out of Buford, Georgia. Pitt dipping into that Georgia area again. And that was, I think that's an important area. It really is a spot that you need to go to. If you're Pitt, particularly when you're playing games in Atlanta every other year with Georgia Tech, and then you're just, we don't tend to think of the state of Georgia as being in the ACC footprint, but I mean it really is. I mean, if you draw a line from Boston College to Miami, and granted that's a big, it's a large geographic area to be covering, but you are going to encompass Georgia, the state of Georgia, and Atlanta. And the reality is, I mean, we talk a lot about Florida, and rightfully so, about the volume of quality players that exists in Florida, and how you should go to Florida because even, you're going to find really good players who are 3-stars down there. And there's a huge volume of 4-star prospects that you can find in that state. And so it's worth the effort to go there and poke around and try and develop some connections. And certainly if you have someone like Charlie Partridge who can really help you, find guys that maybe get overlooked, but also have a connection to give you an in with guys who are some of the, maybe some top higher recruited or higher rated guys. It's worth the time and effort. The reality is for Pitt, Georgia, I think, is worth the time and effort as well. You go look at the Rivals rankings for the state of Georgia, and I mean, it's absurd year in, year out how many 4-star prospects they turn out. They'll get a couple 5-stars, usually every year. But there's a huge depth of 4-star prospects that come out of the state of Georgia in every recruiting class. And that makes it worth the effort. Because when you have that many 4-star guys, when you have that many highly talented players, it sort of trickles down then that even a lot of the 3-stars are really good prospects. And I know stars aren't everything, but this is just the way we're going to kind of group them together here. And, it makes it worth the effort. Particularly if you can gain a few footholds, if you can make a few connections, get a few contacts with some high school coaches and really kind of, some AAU, or not AAU, 7-on-7 coaches, really some trainers, and really kind of establish some connections. You can build relationships and you can start getting in with guys. It's a fertile recruiting ground. And I don't think you make that your number one priority, but I think you use resources to recruit there. I think it's worth it, and it'll pay off just like it has in Florida over the course of time. I think when you, not to get too far sidetracked, we need to talk about more current things, of course. But I think when you look at recruiting territories for Pitt, you're going to obviously look for local areas. You want to find the local guys, and I know there's already questions about a few local guys, and we'll talk about that in a second. You want to get the big-time players that are local. You'd like to get guys out of Eastern PA, but those big-timers in Eastern PA, I can't remember the last big-time prospect Pitt got out of Eastern PA. And by Eastern PA, I mean basically east of Johnstown. You might have to go back to LaShawn McCoy, and he really didn't come to Pitt from Harrisburg. He came to Pitt from Milford, New York, New Berlin, New York, Milford Prep Academy, or whatever it was. I don't even think you could really count that. And they've gotten guys out of Philly. Well, I guess you could look, Anthony Gonzalez, the quarterback who ended up playing on defense, playing linebacker, was a 4-star prospect in the 2010 class, I want to say. He was from Bethlehem. Devin Street was a pretty good recruit, but he didn't have. He was a really good college player, pretty good recruit. Didn't have a ton of offers. Jared Hawley was a really good one. Where was he? He was from Easton or someplace. But this is how far back you have to go. You could go back. I think Keyshawn Jarrett was from out east, like Stroudsburg or someplace like that. But we're going back 10, 11 years here, and since then, it's been a shutout, and they've gotten guys every now and then from Philly, but there's just not a lot. They're not getting the top guys, and it's unfortunate because Eastern PA the last couple of years has had some really good players, but the struggle has been you're not just battling Penn State for those guys. You're always going to have a hard time battling Penn State for kids, certainly in the center of the state. And I think even going out to the eastern part of the state, it's always going to be a challenge to battle against Penn State there. But the problem is you look over the last few recruiting classes, and look at the state rankings, and the guys who are from east of Harrisburg or east of Johnstown even, they're going to Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia. These places are coming in here and scooping these guys up. And that makes it really tough. It's one thing if you're trying to fend off Penn State. If Penn State's the biggest challenger for a lot of these guys in Eastern PA, that's one thing. That's a battle you're going to fight year in, year out for prospects that you're after. And you can win some of those battles. You're not going to win them all. You're probably not going to win majority of them, but you can win some. But when you're not only fighting Penn State, but you're also fighting Georgia and Clemson and Ohio State going in for some of these guys, it's a losing battle. Quite frankly, until you win at a really high level and make Pitt a destination football program in terms of national success, it's going to be hard to get those kinds of guys. Pitt has had more success going to the other side of the Delaware Water Gap and going into New Jersey. You know what I mean? They've had more success going south of the Mason-Dixon line and getting into Maryland and Virginia. They've, quite frankly, had more success going north and going into New York. And they've certainly had more success in Ohio than they've had in Eastern PA. They've had more success in Florida than they've had in Eastern PA. It's just not a place that has fed Pitt very well. I forget how I even got sidetracked on this topic. Or what we're even, I don't know. Oh, we're talking about fertile recruiting areas, areas to go after. And so a long time ago, I think even Walt Harris kind of started this move into Florida, and really kind of diving in there. And there was a brief period, Brian Deal, one of our former Panther-Lair members, called him Brian Ohio Mania deal. Brian Deal, Ohio Mania, because he had a couple of years where he tried to really push into Ohio. I think 2003, 2004 recruiting classes were just filled with Ohio prospects, and very few of them panned out. Some of them did, but very few. But I think Pitt under Dave Wanstead sort of re-centered the efforts on trying to get into Florida. And yeah, S-Mac jumps in. Javon McIntyre's from Philly. And yeah, you're right. Javon in this last class, he wasn't, among the top, say, 5 guys east of Johnstown. I think he's a good player. I'm interested to see how he does coming in at safety. I like both of the safeties in this class, Javon McIntyre and Stephon Hall from Central Valley. But again, this wasn't, he's not a number one guy out there. Those top guys, Pitt has just really struggled to land out of Philadelphia. But anyway, so Dave Wanstead kind of, restarted going into Florida. Paul Christ kind of kept it up, maybe fell off a little bit. Pat Narduzzi, certainly since Charlie Partridge joined the staff, has really emphasized it. And they've stepped up their efforts in Georgia, which I think they absolutely have to do. I think Georgia has to be an area of focus, and it has been. I think Florida has to be an area of focus, and it has been. I think you still push hard in Ohio. I think you push in New Jersey, although things got more challenging with Greg Schiano out there. I'd like to see them keep up their efforts in Virginia. A lot of that's going to depend on Brennan Marion and how well he can recruit in that area. Chris Beatty had them rolling in Tidewater 757. We'll see what Brennan Marion can do. I don't think Pitt's success in Virginia was entirely a result of renewed, of resources and investment as much as it was a result of Chris Beatty being really good in that area. And if Brennan Marion can't pick that up, and I think Brennan Marion is a really good recruiter, but if he can't produce this kind of results that Beatty did, I don't think Virginia becomes, one of your top 3 target states. I don't think it stays one of your top 3 target states because, again, that's a place that a lot of schools know about. And it's sort of centrally located for a lot of schools to go after. The Big Ten can go there. The SEC can go there. The rest of the ACC can go there. But if Marion can build on some connections that he's got and some relationships that he's got and produce for Pitt, then it's worth it, I think. But Georgia, Ryland Gandy, commitment. That was the one. Coaster King tells us that we did not know Ryland Gandy's commitment just yet as of last week's podcast. So that's one that came in. And I think the thing I would say, the last thing to sort of sum up these 4 commitments before we jump into some of your comments and some important topics to discuss. And I think I talked about this last week. Jordan Bailey and Addison Copeland, running back, receiver, probably 2 of the top guys on the board at those positions. I would say Jordan Bailey was no worse than the top 3 at running back, and I would say Addison Copeland was probably right around there as well. And what's really unique is the Pitt staff got a chance to see both of those guys in person. They got to see Jordan Bailey at a camp in Florida in the week leading up to his official visit, on which he committed, and then Addison Copeland takes his official visit Thursday to Saturday, sticks around, stays in town, and works out at Pitt's camp on Sunday. So they got to see both of those guys in person, in addition to the film evaluation and all that they already were sold on. And when they saw them in person, I think they became even more sold. And Bailey went up as high as maybe number 1 on the list. I think Copeland went up as high maybe as number 1 on the list. If not 1, then maybe 2. Both of those guys really highly rated on Pitt's board. And I think that's important. If you can get your top targets, assuming you've evaluated properly and correctly, that should set you up to be in good position to succeed. And then with Ryland Gandy and Jimmy Scott, I don't know if they were number 1 on Pitt's board at their positions, cornerback and defensive end, respectively. I don't know if they were number 2, number 3, number 5, whatever it is. I think they were high enough on their boards, though, that when those guys committed, it limited the amount of spots available for other guys are going to get squeezed out and miss their shot at Pitt because those guys committed. Those guys jumped on spots, 1 at each position. I think they might take 1 more at each position, 1 more corner, 1 more defensive end. And there are guys that, if you're not a tier A target for Pitt right now, and you try to commit at defensive end or you try to commit at cornerback, they're probably going to hold you off. They're probably going to kind of slow you back because they want to get one of those tier A targets. And I think that speaks to Gandy and Scott and what the staff thinks of them, that they're willing to use one of those spots on those guys which effectively squeezes out some other guys. So, again, I don't know if they're number 1. I don't know if they're number 5 or what it is on Pitt's board, but I think that they're high enough that it impacts the whole sort of circle of recruiting, I guess, to put it a certain way. All right, let's jump in on some conversation here. We already got chatters jumping in, and let's see here. What do we got? All right, S-Mac starts it off, and S-Mac and Coaster King both jump in, and Kevin Plaucha, one of our biggest fans, I think dittoed it. It's all about Tyreese Fearbry here. S-Mac says, say it isn't so, Fearbry. Coaster King says, surely we're not about to lose Tyreese Fearbry, after just one visit to the cow pastures, surely. And so here's the deal. All right, this is a big conversation topic this week. Tyreese Fearbry, 4-star defensive end from Perry. Let's see, how to best to tell this story. In the first 16 days of June, the first 16 days that recruits were allowed to take in-person recruiting visits with colleges, Tyreese Fearbry was at Pitt 7 of those 16 days. He visited on June 1st for the so-called hometown throwdown when Pitt took the very first day of in-person recruiting since March 2020 and hosted a bunch of local top prospects. So he was there for that. He came back 2 days later for his official visit, June 3rd, 4th, and 5th. He came back the day after that for a prospect camp, June 6th. Came back the following week for another prospect camp, June 13th. And then came back a few days later when Pitt had a special locals camp on Wednesday the 16th. Just a prospect camp for local guys. 7 out of the first 16 days of the month. He was on Pitt's campus, spending time with Pitt's coaches, building relationships, and building comfort with those coaches. And everything was pointing in that direction, right? Well, this past weekend, he took an official visit to Penn State. And I forget if I talked about this on the podcast last week. I know I wrote about it in the 321 column last Friday, that if you were charting out Tyreese Fearbry's recruitment and Pitt's chances of landing him, the one big event you were going to circle as potentially, not potentially, but the one event that would have a lot of impact, one way or the other, in Pitt's favor or against it, was that Penn State official visit. Because Penn State, it was clear, was going to put on a hard press for Tyreese Fearbry. For a few reasons. One, he's a really good player. He's 4-star defensive end prospect. He's raw. There's no question about it. He's thin, but he's got a big frame. He's athletic. He's got some great natural instincts. With good coaching, he could be a great player. I don't think there's any question about it. So that's the number one reason that's the first reason that Penn State wants him. He's a good prospect. But there's more to it than that. Because last year, Penn State wanted Nikai Johnson. And they wanted Elliott Donald. And they wanted Dorian Ford. And the year before that, they wanted Dayon Hayes. They wanted these guys really bad. And Penn State likes to believe, and a lot of times they've been proven right, that they can walk into Western Pennsylvania and take anybody they want. And again, there's enough history there that that's not just arrogance. That's not just superiority or something like that. They've done it, right? The 2017 class was sort of the infamous bottoming out, I think, where they got Lamont Wade and C.J. Thorpe. They get somebody else that year. I don't think so. I think that was it, actually. Penn State just got those two guys. The problem was Notre Dame came in and got Kurt Heinisch and David Adams, and Michigan came in and got Donovan Jeter. And so a bunch of these guys, and Josh Lugg went to Notre Dame. That was the biggest problem, is Notre Dame came in and took a bunch of guys. But Penn State has a history of being able to go into Western PA and getting guys that it wants, except the last 2 years, when it couldn't get Dayon Hayes, couldn't get Nikai Johnson, couldn't get Dorian Ford, couldn't get Elliott Donald. Now, James Franklin's not calling me and bearing his heart to me. He's not sharing all of his deepest, darkest feelings. He's not crying on my shoulder. I'm not, we're not like that. I was about to say, I'm not holding his hair back as he pukes into the toilet after a long night at the bar. I'm not going to say something like that because that'd be weird. The guy doesn't have any hair. We're not like that. We're not tight like that. So he's not calling to tell me that he was really mad about Penn State missing out on Dorian Ford and Elliott Donald and Nikai Johnson and Dayon Hayes. So I'm not speaking from firsthand knowledge, but from what I've heard, from just sort of reading the tea leaves, and from what I, sort of make of the situation, Penn State was pretty sore about losing those guys. Penn State was pretty sore about the fact that they couldn't get at least one of those guys. And I think they pushed hard on Nakai Johnson, probably more than any of them. I would say they pushed hard for Nakai Johnson. And they even, you could even, we're focused on Western Pennsylvania here, but late in the process, they tried to get Khalil Anderson last fall too to flip from Pitt, and they couldn't pull it off. Penn State wants to get a little bit of momentum back. So Tyreese Fearbry goes to, or not even momentum, but they want to notch a couple wins in Western PA recruiting against Pitt. Tyreese Fearbry goes to Penn State this past weekend, and they worked him hard. Hard. Tyreese Fearbry 2 weeks ago went to Kentucky, right? Came out of the visit, and you could kind of tell, I could kind of tell when I interviewed him that he wasn't really feeling the rural setting of Lexington. He didn't really care for the country. It's what he said. He said it would take some time to get adjusted to. Well, Penn State knew that coming in. And obviously, if you're not going to feel comfortable in the country of Kentucky, you're really going to be interested in seeing what you see when you get out of the car in State College, right? And so it's interesting to me that coming out of this visit to Penn State, Tyreese Fearbry is talking about how he has been wanting to get out of the city. It's curious because I haven't really heard him say that before or anything even like that. It seems like he's talked about being in the city and playing for the city and putting on for the city and representing the city in Pittsburgh. And getting out of the city is not something I've really heard him talk about. I can only conclude, and I might be wrong about this, but I can only conclude that he went to Penn State for an official visit, and Penn State hammered him on the thought of leaving the city and what it would mean to get out of the city. And now he comes out of the visit talking about how he wants to get out of the city. This was the plan. The plan was to get Tyreese Fearbry and to make the official visit so impactful that, the guy goes into it thinking about Pitt because he's been there 7 days so far this month. And he comes out thinking about how high he is on Penn State. And even told Adam Freeman from Rivals.com that if he, in his post-visit interview, he told him that if he was committing that day, it would be Penn State. That's a hard one for Pitt. Now, it's not over. Fearbry is committing on July 4th, so there's a couple weeks until that happens. Everything's still in play. Pitt still has plenty of time to remind him of how comfortable he was when he was on campus all those times. He still has time to remind him of how Dalen Hayes is doing at Pitt, or Nakai Johnson is doing at Pitt, or Elliot Donald, or all these guys. They still have plenty of time to swing his opinion back. But quite frankly, this is what I expected to happen. I didn't know how impressed he would be with the Penn State visit, but I knew they were going to make sure it was an amazing visit. And it seems like they did that. It seems like they got his attention and drew his interest. And so now Pitt has to fight back. Pitt has to battle. Because Tyreese Fearbry is now the sort of central figure in this battle for Western PA recruits. There's not a lot in this 2022 recruiting class in Western PA. It's not a strong class. I think Sean Fitzsimmons is good. Central Valley defensive tackle who's committed to Pitt. Patrick Bodie at Gateway, I think he's a pretty good prospect. He's got some Power 5 offers. There's Fearbry, like I said, but not. Cade Yakimelli at Penn Trafford just committed to Wisconsin, but that was his only Power 5 offer. There's just not a lot in this area for this class. And the biggest guy, the top ranked guy is Tyreese Fearbry. And he is the central figure now in this sort of push and pull between Pitt and Penn State for Western PA recruits. And that doesn't, I don't mean that to speak less of him. It's not an insult to him or a slight to him or anything like that. That's just, I think, how it's setting up. And Pitt has won the last 4 of these battles. You know what I mean? With Donald and Johnson and Ford and Hayes. But here's the next one. And Sure, maybe if Tyreese Fearbry was committing on Monday, this past Monday, yesterday, some people might call it, then yeah, Penn State might win that battle. But Pitt's got some time to sort of fight back in it. I don't think they're out of it yet. I don't think it's over yet. And but this is sort of what I expected to happen. I expected Penn State to put on a really good show and try to really sway his opinion, which it seems like they did. That this is recruiting. You're in a fight now. You're in a battle, and Pitt has to fight that battle. So they've got time, and we'll see what they're able to do. All right, let's move on here. Doug Woods asked a question. How does the new 12-team playoff affect Pitt? Any chance this improves their situation? Well, I think if you, and I forget exactly the details, if they're going to move to, Power 5 conference champions or automatic qualifiers, I think that gives you a better chance if you're Pitt. I think they have a... Look, if you can get to the ACC championship game, you're going to have a chance. Even if you're against Clemson, the juggernaut, and all of that stuff, you're going to have a chance. The ball can bounce different ways, and you might be able to steal a game, all right? Their chances of getting an at-large bid on a consistent basis, probably not likely. But what this does, I think, is opens the door that if they really have that special year, they really have that high-end year, and they just miss it in the ACC championship game, they have a shot at an at-large if they end up, somewhere in the top 12. It's going to be tough. It's not really all that much more likely, aside from just sort of the mathematic, probability of whatever is 120 teams, and you were taking 4, and now you're taking 12. So, I guess you're, just on simply being 1 out of 100 and whatever, or 1 out of 12 or whatever it is. I mean, I guess you tripled your chances. It seems unlikely, but it should give more meaning to some late season games. I mean, the fact is for Pitt, their schedule in most seasons is going to set up, if they're smart, their schedule in most seasons will set up for them to, be in a pretty strong position by the end of the year if they take care of business. We talk about this year's schedule all the time, right? 8-0, not an 8-0 start to the season, but 8-0 against your 4 non-conference games, and then those 4 other games that I always talk about, Duke, Syracuse, Virginia, and Georgia Tech. 8-0 should be a given on those 8 games. You should be able to get that, you should be able to make that happen. And then you have a chance with Virginia Tech and North Carolina and Miami and Clemson to build on that 8-0 to 9 or to 10 or to 11 or whatever it is. That's how the schedule should be in most years. You should have a chance to the schedule should set up for you to have a chance to be in a strong position by the end of the year. Can you get yourself into the top 12 and keep yourself there after the ACC championship game? That's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. You're probably going to need to win it more often than not, unless you went like 12-0 through the regular season to keep yourself in the top 12. But if you take care of business as the season goes on, you'll at least be in the conversation. And maybe that's what it gives you. You know what I mean? Maybe that's to Doug's question, any chance this improves Pitt's situation, a 12-team playoff improves Pitt's situation? I think that's how it improves Pitt's situation, is it gives them a greater opportunity, not necessarily to make the playoffs, but it gives them a greater opportunity to be in the conversation late in the season. If you're part of what's being talked about nationally, if you're being discussed, if your resume is being talked about, if your logo is flashing on the screen, if talking heads are talking about you, if your games are relevant, that improves your situation. It makes you more relevant. It makes you more nationally prominent, which is going to help you with recruiting and help you ultimately, should help you win more games. So, I mean, I think it improves their situation in that way. Do I expect Pitt to make a playoff when it's 12 teams? I mean, it still seems like a tall order given the current state of things, but it helps. It doesn't make it harder for Pitt to make the playoffs, but it helps. Let's see. S-Mac says, is the bridge officially burned with Jalen Hood-Schifino? Yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably pretty unlikely. Jalen Hood-Schifino, who's a 4-star recruit in the class of 2022, former Pitt commit in the class of 2000. I forget exactly. And he reclassified and all this stuff. Was supposed to take an official visit last week. Ended up, the Pitt canceled the visit. I think they had a commitment from Judah Mintz, pretty much locked up. He ended up committing on Friday. A shooting guard, and and Pitt, like I say, canceled the official visit. I can't see anything coming out of that. I think that relationship is probably pretty much gone, but stranger things have happened. You never know in recruiting what exactly is going to what's going to come up. Brock Madonic asks if you have to pick which incoming basketball transfer will make the biggest impact, who are you willing to bank on? I'll go with Jamarius Burton. All right, Brock picks Jamarius Burton. I think Burton's going to be good as a backup point guard. I think he's going to be in the mix. He's going to get a lot of minutes. I think what you'll see as far as the backcourt goes, you're going to see Femi Odikali and Nike Sabandi and Ethiel Horton and Jamarius Burton all playing a lot. I would guess that of the minutes, Femi Odikali is going to get the most minutes. I think Burton is going to be a backup at the 1 and the 2, really. Either giving Odikali some rest, giving Sabandi some rest, or playing, in the 2 between Odikali and Sabandi. Something like that. I think he can play a lot. But I think if I was going to pick the transfer who will make the biggest impact, I might go with Mo Gee, transfer from Stony Brook, the center. I just feel like he is a guy, what do you average, like 3 blocks per game this past season at Stony Brook? And I know you're going from it's a major difference between Stony Brook and Pitt, the teams that Stony Brook was playing and the teams that Pitt is playing. But I think shot blocking ability is, I don't know if it necessarily transcends conferences, but I do think it's something that if you can do it, you should be able to do it at a variety of different levels. I think Mo Gee could come in here and really have an impact defensively, potentially with rebounding as well. It's been so long since Pitt has had a guy who could stand near the basket and, deter shots and make it just unappealing for guys to try and drive to the rim because he's standing there ready to swat the ball away. Pitt hasn't had a guy who could consistently do that. And like I always say, Terrell Brown was pretty decent at it, but he played like 11 minutes a game last year. I think Mo Gee is going to get more than 11 minutes per game. I think he's going to split the minutes at center with John Hughley, and I think he's going to make an impact even just defensively. I don't know what he's going to produce offensively, but I think defensively he's going to make an impact and a positive one. Because this team, again, maybe even more so than last year, and I talked about this a lot last year when they were at their best, the things they were doing is they were defending and they were rebounding. That was when they were at their best. Even in some of the games that they lost, when they played their best, when they gave themselves the best chance to win is when they were playing tough defense and they were rebounding well. The old Jamie Dixon mantras, right? We all got tired of hearing it, but guess what? It works. And it worked when Dixon was here, and it worked at times last year. And if this year's team is going to have success, even if they might be undersized in certain matchups, they're still going to have to do it with defense and rebounding. And the games where their defense and rebounding falls short, those are the games they're going to lose, no matter what their offense does. I say this all the time. I said this all the time throughout the season. Your shots, your offense is going to come and go. Some nights shots are going to fall, and some nights they're not. This team is not offensively talented enough to rely on the shots falling night in, night out. But what they can rely on is how hard they play on defense, how tough they play on defense, how well they communicate on defense, how smart they play on defense, and then how they rebound, how they position themselves, their tenacity. They have to be willing, and I think Jeff Capel would say this too. Pitt has to be willing to outwork every team they face. They have to be willing to do it. I don't know if they were last year. I don't think they were. I don't think they've been willing to do that for years, even into the last few Jamie Dixon years. I don't think they've been willing to outwork every team they face. I don't think they've felt not just a responsibility, but a necessity to outwork every team they face. And I don't know if this team is going to be able to understand that. I don't know if this team is going to absorb it, but they need to if they want to win. Have to be willing to outwork other teams. And that's what you need to do if you're going to win with defense and rebounding, which is what this team is going to need to do. And I think Mo Gee can have a positive impact in that regard. I do think Jamarius Burton will play a lot. I think he can help this team and do some good work with this team. I think he can help set a tone. Some of these things we talk about with work ethic and effort and tenacity and the defense and the rebounding and the effort that goes into those elements. I think Burton can help set that tone. Physicality, being physical on the court. I think Burton can go a long way with that. I think Dan Oladapo can too. I think Mo Gee can bring it. And those guys are going to have to, and the rest of the team's going to need to buy into that as well. So I would go with Mo Gee for now, but we'll see. Who knows when the season actually starts. Another question from Brock Madonic. Do you like Pitt's chances with Marcus Peterson? Marcus Peterson's a wide receiver from Florida. Interesting guy, a bigger guy, 6'3", 6'4", wide receiver. Took his official visit to Pitt 3 weeks ago, went to UCF and then Cincinnati over the following couple of weeks, and he's going to announce his commitment on July 4th. It's those three schools, Pitt, Central Florida, Cincinnati. I like Pitt's chances, but like I say, right before we started the podcast tonight, I was on the phone with actually another wide receiver from Florida, Camden Brown, who's taking his official visit this weekend. And I don't know if Camden Brown, this wide receiver from Florida, is going to commit this weekend, but I think that could shift the priorities as it relates to Marcus Peterson, the wide receiver who's committing on July 4th. I think Pitt likes Peterson a lot. I don't know if they're going to take more than 2 wide receivers, and they already got Addison Copeland. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there. I think Pitt has a really good chance with Marcus Peterson. I think other factors outside of Peterson's own decision-making process could change Pitt's situation with Marcus Peterson. So we'll see about that. RJC Man 38, one of our super chatters, and we very much appreciate him jumping in there. If you want to be a super chatter, contribute to the podcast, you can hit that. Should have that little dollar sign at the bottom. I believe we got that turned on, and you can certainly chime in there, and we very much appreciate that. Wait, lost your comment there, buddy. Hold on. Oh, he says about Pitt hammering Florida pretty good, and yeah, you're right. Florida has been an area that has been good to Pitt, and they have guys on this year's roster that are going to play a big role that are coming out of Florida. I mean, Vincent Davis. You could look at it. I think Daniel Carter, another running back, is going to play there. Guys like Jared Wayne and Habakkuk Baldonado, not from Florida, but they were recruited out of Florida. Even though Baldonado's from Italy and Jared Wayne's from Canada, they were still recruited out of Florida. I was just thinking of somebody else. There's a few other guys from Florida that are out there that... I'm drawing a blank. I thought of somebody else. I mean, Shockey Jacques Louis is out there. But, I mean, Florida has been good to Pitt over the years. I don't think there's any question about that. We all know that. And they're going to keep recruiting there because they need to. Bart Simpson said this could be a huge year for the program to take a step forward. If Pitt can go 6-0 into the Clemson game, win or at least put up a good fight and finish with 9 wins. If not, Pat may not be the guy. Yeah, I mean, look, we it's a Tuesday night in June, so we don't have to go too far down the road of determining Pat Narduzzi's future. But, I mean, I've said things like this in the past, that there is a feeling that with the way this schedule is set up, with the team that they've got coming back, with the quarterback and a lot of the returning starters that they have, and, again, the schedule that it is, this is a year to do it. This is a year to win and kind of push above that 8-win, regular season mark to get up to 9 wins or maybe get up to 10 wins. This is a year to do it. And if you're not able to do it, if you can't, if you can't do it this year, I don't know. You do start to wonder. I think it raises some questions, and like I say, we're not going to litigate Pat Narduzzi's future here in the middle of June. We'll see what happens when the season actually starts. But, I think you can make a good case that if you can't do it this year, when are you going to do it? Because the non-conference starts creeping up again. It starts increasing in difficulty over the next couple years. So this is a year where you really should be able to push above that bubble. We'll see. Josh Newark says, can Pitt suggest to take another unofficial visit for Fearbry, or is that a violation of NCAA rules? No, you can invite anybody down as many times as you want for an unofficial visit. You can take endless numbers of unofficial visits. I mean, Tyreese Fearbry or anybody could go to Pitt today, tomorrow. What is tomorrow? Wednesday. They could go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all the way up until the end of the month. Until the next dead period starts, and there's no recruiting, in-person recruiting that's allowed. You could have as many as you want. We'll see if they manage to get Fearbry back on campus again before he commits. I think that would be ideal for Pitt. Get him around the coaches one more time, or two, or three. But I definitely think they'll be trying to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes down there again. But yeah, it certainly wouldn't be a violation of NCAA rules, no doubt. Let's see here. Hog Muncher says, and he's super chatting. We appreciate that, but he says, any chance he could provide an inside scoring presence too? If you're talking about Mo Gee, I'm not sure what to expect out of him offensively. I'm not sure what to expect out of any of Pitt's front court players, really, in terms of offense and what they'll be able to provide. I just don't know. I feel like this team offensively is going to be guard-driven. I think it's going to be all about the backcourt. I think Femi Odikali, I think Nike Sabandi are going to be the leading scorers on this team. I think Ithio Horton, if he can get it together, is going to be a big part of this offense. I just don't see the front court providing all that much in the way of scoring. And that's the 4 or the 5. I look at that group, and I'm not sure anybody jumps out as being a huge offensive presence. Not at this point, at least. I mean, maybe down the road, and Noah Collier could score, or John Hughley could score. But I don't see Pitt going into the season relying on any of those guys to be leading scorers for the team. I think it's backcourt. I think that's what this team is all about. It's going to be guard-driven, at least in terms of the offense. And they're going to rely on the centers and the forwards to either finish when they dish to them or kick it back out to an open shooter outside the arc. And most important, they're going to rely on them to rebound. That's what they're going to have to do. So, I don't know if you count on anybody to be an offensive presence out there. Let's see here. Tyler Buchanan, what do you think is the depth chart at wide receiver going into camp? Do you think Shockey and Barden are competing for the same spot? Let me see. I don't know about the spots. I'm never entirely sure who's playing where or why they're playing, where they're playing, or anything like that. Let's see. But as far as the wide receiver depth chart, I mean, you obviously have Jordan Addison at the top, right? And then you've got Taysir Mack, who I think is kind of your number 2 guy. I would imagine. And then beyond that, I think you mix and match with who you want and how you want to use them. I mean, I like a guy like Jared Wayne. I think Jared Wayne is a really good possession receiver. He's big-bodied. I think he got a lot bigger from year 1 to year 2 last year. And I would expect him to, continue to sort of build and develop his body going into his junior year. And I think he could be a really strong, like I say, kind of big possession receiver, catch passes over the middle of the field, nothing really deep downfield. I think what you're looking at, your routes, some quick hitters to Jordan Addison, middle of the field, mid gainers to Jared Wayne, and then deep shots to Taysir Mack, who can get down there and I think he's still one of their better contested pass catchers. I like Jalen Barden a lot. I think Jalen Barden's going to play a lot this year. I think he's going to be really good. I think his minimal flashes, minimal opportunities that he got last year, he made the most of them and looked really good doing it. He had a good spring game. I think he had a really good spring by all accounts of what we've heard. And I think he's got a chance to be a real stud. I don't know about guys playing the same position. If Shockey Jacques-Louis and Jalen Barden play the same position, or Barden and Addison, or Addison and Melquist Stovall, the transfer who's coming in from the transfer who's coming in from, where's Stovall coming from? Hawaii. right? I don't know. I don't know anything about, when guys are locked into positions and one guy kind of blocks the other one from playing. We saw that last year where Jordan Addison blocked DJ Turner, and when Turner got his opportunities, he caught like 18 passes in a game and this kind of thing. I don't think you want to let that happen this year. I don't think you want guys to be versatile. I think you want guys to be able to play multiple spots so you can mix and match, so you can put Addison and Barton on the field together, so you can put Mack and Wayne on the field together, so you can put whatever combination you want out there. Because you've got some talented playmakers in the receiving core. You want to get them on the field. You want to make sure those guys are getting out there and getting opportunities to play. In addition to the tight ends. I think Lucas Kroll, if he stays healthy, should have a real impact this year. But he's got to stay healthy. But as far as the receiver depth chart, they rotate those guys enough that I don't know if there's a huge distinction to be made there. I imagine they'll swap the depth chart around every day in training camp. Sometimes in practice, they'll swap it around. But there's Jordan Addison as your clear number one, and then everybody else kind of mixes and matches in around and behind him. I do think Jalen Barton's going to have a really good year, though. That's one guy that I'm super high on for this season. Still like Jared Wayne a lot. Obviously, Addison's really good. And I think Taysom Mack is in line for a bounce-back season, too. I think he's dealt with injuries the last year, maybe even the last 2 years, and they've held him back and kept him from being as effective and consistent as he would like to be, maybe from being as consistent and effective as he's capable of being. I think this year could be a year where he can really put it all together and break out. Let's see here. Coaster King. How much of a priority would you say the New Jersey corner coming this weekend is? That's Davison Igbinison. I apologize if I messed up his name. I think he's a high priority. I think they'd like to get him. I think he could probably play safety. I think they might be recruiting him as a safety. But I think he's got he's able to play both. I think he's got the size to play safety. But he's got speed and athleticism to play corner, so he could do either one. I think they'd love to get him. But I think they've got a number of defensive backs on the board that they're trying to land. CJF says, thoughts on Chris Payton at the 4. You previously said that you thought Oladapo would take the majority of those minutes, whereas Jim Hammett thinks Chris Payton will be the starter at that spot. If Jim says that Chris Payton's going to be the starter, I'm going to defer to Jim. He knows more than me. And I don't even say that sarcastically. Jim's a smart guy. He knows what he's talking about. I don't know. I think you could have a number of spots this year. The 4 would be one of them. I think the 5 would be one of them, where you'll have a starter and you'll have a backup. And then when you look at the minutes at the end of the game, they're pretty close to even. I think Daniel Oladapo as a transfer from Oakland and Chris Payton as a junior college player coming in, we'll both see a lot of time. At the 4, I think Payton. See, the other thing too is, I think the minutes could end up being pretty similar, but I think you could see Payton take minutes at the 5. I think he's got that wingspan. He's got like a 7'1", 7'2" wingspan, so you could see him take minutes at the 5 as well. So you get Payton and Mo Gee and John Hughley working at the 5. You get Oladapo and Payton and Noah Collier working at the 4. You get Will Jeffers at the 3, and then Sabandi sometimes playing at the 3. You get Horton and Sabandi playing at the 2, and Burton rotates in there a little bit, and Burton and Odekali play at the 1. And that doesn't even bring up Nate Santos, the freshman who's coming in. You've got guys that you can move around. And so you have a starter and you have a depth, and then you look at the minutes at the end and they're both kind of the same, or maybe you add them together and they don't even add up to 40. They add up to 45 or something because those guys move around and play different positions. And I think the 4 is a spot where that can happen with Oladapo and Payton. Like I say, I think the 5 is a spot where that can happen with Hughley and Mo Gee and Chris Payton. You're going to have a lot of versatility here. Payton could probably even slide up and play small forward. You could play him at the 3. This roster has flexibility. This roster has versatility. You're able to move guys around, and I think that's that's a good thing. You might not have the biggest roster in the ACC, but you're going to have. So you might not have the biggest front court in the ACC, but you might have the biggest sort of 2 to 4. There's potential to have the biggest 2 through 4 in the ACC. Depending on what lineup you want to put on the court. All right, last question. At least it's come in so far, and this might be the last one of the night. Bart Simpson asks, the real question is, who is Pat Narduzzi going to start at running back? That's a great question. You could tell me Vincent Davis will start at running back, and I would say, okay, I believe that. You could tell me Izzy Abanikanda would start at running back, and I would say, okay, I could believe that. You could tell me that AJ Davis will start at running back, and I'll say, well, I think that's a little less likely, but he's, fifth-year guy, senior, a lot of experience. Okay, I could believe that. There aren't many names you could throw out as a starter at running back that right now, as we sit here on June 22nd, that I would be like, no way, that's not happening. I mean, maybe if you wanted to say like Owen Drexel, I would say, okay, that's not going to happen. Kenny Pickett, it's not going to happen, right? Mark Whipple, Albie Oxenrider. You could throw out names of people, and I would, Dick Trickle, and these guys. Dick Trickle is not going to start at running back for Pitt this year. I could tell you that. I'm confident about that. I don't even know if Dick Trickle's still alive. Jeez, feel bad if he's dead, and I'm sitting here mentioning him, admittedly for humorous purposes, and poor guy has passed away, so I apologize. Oh, Cole Trickle. You could say Cole Trickle, who may or may not be related to Dick Trickle. Those guys are not going to start at running back for Pitt this year. If I had to put money on someone, I would put it on Izzy Abanikanda. There was so much praise for him coming out of spring camp. He obviously had a huge spring game, looked great out there, kind of lived up to everything we had heard about him over the course of the last year about how he had size and speed and just instincts and balance. It was just vision. A really good running back and potentially be the best all-around running back on this roster. And I think we saw it in the spring game. And it was great to see. You saw a guy really kind of elevate his game and impress people and show some fireworks. We talked about it after the spring game that, you go into a spring game, you want a little bit of fireworks. You want a little bit of excitement. You want to get people fired up and excited for the coming season. And Izzy Abanikanda kind of did that all on his own. There were a few other plays, Davis Bevel making some good plays, Lucas Krull having some catches, but Abanikanda accounted for a lot of those fireworks on his own. And so, it would not surprise me to see him carry that over into training camp and carry that into the season and be the starting running back. Where it goes from there is anyone's guess. I don't want to see, you don't want to see them changing backs every series. You would like to give a guy a chance to get into a rhythm. I think that helps with establishing the running game. And I think Abanikanda looks like the kind of guy who could get into a rhythm and carry the ball 30 times and really establish something over the course of a game. But you're still going to mix in Vincent Davis. Daniel Carter is going to get some work. Todd Sibley's going to get a carry or two here or there. AJ Davis is going to get some work. But Abanikanda might be the best overall running back on the team, I would think. Pete K says Kalijah Kancey is not going to be the starting right. You can't rule that out entirely. I saw a game where Connor Dentino was the starting fullback. So, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility to do something weird like that. We've seen Rashad Wheeler move, play fullback, start at fullback or something. So you can't entirely rule it out. And Kancey's a small, athletic guy, man. He might be able to, small for his size. Or unless you're saying Clancy. Pete K, I think, was saying Sam Clancy is not going to start at running back. Okay, I'll buy that. Kalijah Kancey might start at running back for Pitt this year. He's got a non-0% chance of starting at running back. Sam Clancy has a 0% chance of starting at running back for Pitt this year. Pat Bostic also will not be starting at running back for Pitt this year. Is there anybody else who will not be starting at running back? Oh, I know some people. Let me run down the list. S. Mack will not be starting at running back for Pitt this year. Kevin Plowchuk, Coaster King, Doug Woods, Brock Madonic will not be starting at running back for Pitt this year. RJ Seaman, 38, Bart Simpson, the cartoon character, and the chatter here on our podcast will not be starting at running back. Hogmuncher, I apologize. Josh Newark, Tyler Buchanan. You guys not CJF. You guys will not be starting in Pete K. You will not be starting at running back for Pitt this year. I don't know if we can rule anybody else out. Everybody else is on the table. All right. Big official visit weekend. Final official visit weekend of the month coming up here. Pitt's got about, I think, 5 or 6 guys set to come in for official visits. We'll keep working to Tyler Buchanan says Kevin Stallings will not be starting at running back for Pitt this year. You're right. We are working to confirm names throughout this week for the official visitors this weekend, guys who will be coming in for the final official visit weekend of the month. We'll have plenty of coverage of that on Panther-Lair.com. Got an article, an interview coming up. Alan Saunders, I don't know. He might be. I don't know if Alan has any eligibility left, but I mean, he's a big guy. He could probably, he's a power back. He could probably, Alan could, he might be able to shed a few tackles. He's got vision. Maybe Alan's going to start at running back for Pitt this year. What was I even saying? Oh, Panther-Lair.com. It's the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. You can find all the latest Pitt football, basketball, recruiting info right there. You can, of course, get all the latest updates. Like I say, we got an interview with Camden Brown. I got off the phone with him right before this podcast. Florida wide receiver. We will be running that article first thing Wednesday morning about him looking ahead to his official visit at Pitt this weekend. And, all of our other coverage of everybody who's coming in to visit this weekend, any other big recruiting news that comes up throughout the week. We got it at Panther-Lair.com. And if you enjoy this playful banter here during the podcast and the live stream, you get that on the message boards 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Panther-Lair.com message boards. So go check it out, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Like I say, it's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com. Saturday mornings, make sure you check it out, 8 a.m. on 93.7 The Fan, the Panthers Insider Show. It's our radio show that we do once a week on The Fan. It's a lot of fun to talk Pitt sports. We enjoy that, and hopefully you can tune in and check that out. And, we got 2/10 speed and agility chiming in. Our guy D. Brown, he will not be starting at running back for Pitt this weekend, but he points out Tamir Robinson, the 4-star outside linebacker from Brashear, got an Ohio State offer today. And you want to talk about guys coming up in the next few classes. Tamir Robinson from Brashear, he's about as big as it gets. There's some studs in Western PA. In the 23 class and the 24 class. 23 class guys were going into their junior years of high school. 24 class guys were going into their sophomore years of high school. And those two guys, there's some guys in those two classes. Tamir Robinson's a big one in the 23 class, along with Rodney Gallagher from Laurel Highlands. It's two national recruits right here in Western PA in that 2023 class. Yeah, keep an eye on those guys for sure. We'll have all the coverage of those guys at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. You check it out. It's the most comprehensive source, Pitt sports news on the internet. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in here on the live stream on Tuesday night. It was a lot of fun. We had a good conversation. Had a lot of laughs, shed a few tears, talked about Dick Trickle. And thanks for listening to the podcast through the week. We appreciate everybody who tunes in and all the time. Make sure you check out the website for all the latest news. And nothing else big comes up between now and then. We'll talk to you next Tuesday night at 8:30. For the Panther-Lair Show. So thanks again, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Go there, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks again. Have a great week. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next Tuesday night.